Hello, it's Philip Taylor speaking from Richmond Green Chambers in London, and this morning I'm looking at a book which has come to us from Oxford University Press. It's an important book. It's called Sovereign Debt and Human Rights, this book here. It's been edited by two people, Ilias Bantekas and Cephas Lumina. And this book has emerged from the Greek financial crisis, which I'll talk about in a moment. Let me first of all give you an indication of the title of our book review, which is what I've actually put forward. I've said important modern observations on human rights and sovereign debt at a time of change since 2015. I've tried to capture what the book is about, because it is about, it's a law book, it's about financial issues, obviously going back some way, and it's trying to give some indication, both by the two editors and the team of contributors, some suggestions about where we go forward concerning the problems of sovereign debt. And of course it's linked with the whole issue of human rights, and I will touch on that in the review. Let's look at the book first. It's a hardback. There it is. There's the front, there's the spine, nothing much on the back. Now on the back, it's got also published by OUP, other titles in the series, in the dust jacket, and on the front you've got some basic blurb about the book and then about the authors there. Then, as I say, the book itself is a hardback. It runs to something approaching just under 600 pages. The index at the back is by page numbering. It's quite a substantial index, which I thought was quite helpful, because this is a heavyweight book, without a doubt. There's the index there, and it says for entries relating to individual countries, see the main entries for the country. So that's because it's looking at sovereign debt across the board to a certain extent, hence the global observation I've made. That's the front page. And after that you've got the blurb from OUP and the preface. And do read the preface right at the beginning. I'll mention that in a few minutes. There's the content section. Now, it's quite a detailed content section, and I found it quite helpful because it's split into various parts to cover the various chapters. And what you've got is a total of 28 chapters. There's the end of that particular section. And then you've got the index. Then you've got the table of cases by country, again, and by jurisdiction as well, which I think helps. Then you've got legislation, again in the same way. Then you've got treaties and international instruments. And then a list of abbreviations, always helpful in this particular area of business and of law, mainly because there's a lot of abbreviations, I'm sure you can see. And of course it's easy to forget sometimes what these abbreviations mean. Then after that you've got the list of contributors, starting off with the two editors, and then I think it's 28 contributors in total, all the way through. I can't mention them by name because there are a very large number of them, but each chapter has the heading, and then you have the people who've written it. So the first one is by the two editors. It's the introduction on sovereign debt and human rights, and obviously it starts off the pursuit of human rights and internationalisation of this effort through activism and the adoption of several international treaties of almost universal application was initially a radical departure. Obviously then read on, because you will find that it's become much more relevant as time has progressed. And one of the reasons for that is what I'm going to say in the review, because whilst this is about sovereign debt and about the human rights of people primarily within Europe, I hasten to add, the point I would make is that this has worldwide, in my view, worldwide application for reasons to be known, to emerge in a minute. This is what I say then. The writers, Ilias Bantekas and Cephas Lumina, say that sovereign debt is necessary for the functioning of many modern states, yet its impact on human rights is underexplored in academic literature. And it may be considered, of course, by some readers that this statement sums up the issues raised with the subject matter itself. And this wrong now, of course, has been put right by OUP in what I think is the most interesting title, Sovereign Debt and Human Rights, this book here. Now, I suggest you begin by reading the preface, which comes from the editors, and they explain how the book was conceived, because it's actually the history of where the book came from that gives you an idea of the lessons that we might learn. The editors were engaged with the Greek Parliamentary Committee on the truth of the Greek debt in 2015. The committee's findings made it abundantly clear that a country's debt is a complex phenomenon. And the reason given by the committee's leader, primarily, Eric Toussaint, are that the most powerful stakeholders will typically silence all dissent as to the nature and even the existence of the debt. And I think that's a really key point. It comes out in the preface, and obviously that's a key point about this book, because the editors suggest that these stakeholders understand all too well that if you silence dissent long enough, spread panic and simultaneously impose austerity measures without respite, then even a determined population would ultimately give up in the face of fatigue and survival. Now, that is Greece. I don't think the same thing applies in the UK, but do look at the parallels and consider them because of our period of austerity here and what has happened since, and the fact that we are going to have a day of judgment on that, frankly, in the future, because you can see the social implications that have arisen. Food banks, lack of respect for the rule of law, and a whole range of problems, policing, a whole range of problems within state funding, which are a big issue. So let me continue, because what happens is the editors then go on to say that it's exactly what happened in Greece. The tale of what happened to Greece, and also that the Greek people ultimately accepted the miserable conditions inflicted upon them, is salutary in my view, because indeed the book offers an understanding of the mechanics of sovereign debt. And I think an important warning indeed here, where the editors have made a distinct effort to engage views different to their own. And again, I think that's an important matter to bear in mind, because they've tried to get some sort of balance. Now, there are two main authors, which are the editors, and as I say, the first chapter is well worth reading. You then go into the 28 contributors, all of whom are very highly qualified people. They put forward a step-by-step analysis of the debt phenomenon and how it affects human rights from many angles. And the book begins by setting out the historical, political and economic context of sovereign debt. Then it goes on to address in detail the human rights dimension of the policies and the activities of the three types of sovereign lenders. That is to say, international financial institutions, sovereigns and private lenders. Now, Bantekas and Lumina, I hope I pronounced the names correctly, together with their excellent team of global experts, review the link between debt, how the accumulation of debt, sovereign debt, violates human rights in particular. And we found the examination of some of the conditions imposed by structural adjustment programs on debt states very informative, offering a view on how the servicing of their debt actually occurred, and it was always also equally illuminating. And the contributors also reflect on how such conditions have been shown to exacerbate the debt itself at the expense of economic sovereignty. And that actually is one of the biggest problems I think we're facing at the moment. It's a political rather than a legal one. The conclusion, without giving too many spoilers out here, is that such measures worsen the borrower's economic situation and are injurious to the entrenched rights of peoples. And of course, that is, if you take even a good example of the rise of Nazism, you can see the problems post-1918 Germany, for instance, and Weimar. So therefore you can get some idea of something that goes to a very serious extreme. Let me conclude by saying that indeed our OUP titles that we review always offer great modern observations, and this one's very much part of that. And I think they'll be of interest to a very wide readership after the events of 2015. And of course, Greece is a particular worry and problem even now, and I'm recording this at the beginning of 2019. And we're very grateful, therefore, for the detail uncovered by the Greek Parliamentary Committee for all of us, because I do think this is a lesson basically that we need to we see what's happened to them, and I hope we can benefit from it, and that's the beauty of the book. And the book was published on the 15th of August 2018. Let's just have a look at it again. There it is, it's hardback, and a bit side, nothing much on the back. An interesting cover, so the mountains, if you like. I think it's mountains. It doesn't actually say what the cover is, but anyway, when we go into the middle of the book, let me just open it up. You haven't got paragraph numbering. You've got a lot of footnoting, which is quite useful, but there isn't paragraph numbering. There is in some of the chapters, for instance, but not in that one. This one, for instance, you can clearly see the paragraph number, but fortunately the index at the back doesn't deal with that. It actually uses page numbers, so that makes life a bit easier. Anyway, a big thank you to everybody involved in this. I'd like to thank OUP again for taking this book under their wing. It's a first-class book, and I think it would be very useful to anybody involved in the political world, the economic world, and the legal world. Thank you to all. Bye-bye.